Well, here we are for podcast 6. It's this one's going to go a bit longer than normal. I've put a lot of work into this one. That's why it's been a bit of a time between videos. But this one's going to look at a purely simulational type of theory and get our heads around what that actually is, and so we can better understand the simulation and training ground or school that we live in. And it's going to move on to getting out of this ship of fools and having a look at the conundrum. You know, some of us, like myself, are fully enjoying this simulation that we're in, and while we have thoughts that, are we actually ready to graduate? Do we want it imprinted as we die that we not only that we're numbing, not that we are coming back? Do we want to really be placed in another avatar? Have we learnt all that we need to, and have we done enough? And I think that was troubling me for a little while, but I think that if you can appreciate, you have to appreciate what's here. We start off with the belief we're born into sin, and we're thrown in this dungeon program and tried to be restricted and not told we're these immortal spirit souls. And I think learning that is half the battle. The other half is getting to the point where you think, well, I've done all the appreciating here I can. And I think as we're building our perspective of what is now, based on not only drawing off what's happened in the future and knowing that we're here and we've been given the opportunity and that we put ourselves in this game, we're put in here as fallible creatures with lots of trials and tribulations and faults. And if not much bad happens to you in your life, or you've been through 2 degrees like myself and been indoctrinated, I'm very thankful that I'm here in this position I am today after having all of those things thrust at me. And it was worrying to me for a little while that is it going to be possible that I've done enough and learned enough? But I think that we need to just appreciate the beautiful part of this reality that we're in, because after all, the sim is just a direct copy of a real world, and being real people, we can only appreciate what's happened in the future. And as our perspective changes, I think how amazingly different the world looks to me now than it did in the past. And if I looked at myself now from using a past me earlier in this lifetime, I would consider myself something abnormal or unusual. And that just shows that we are indeed putting in the effort to learn, and that we are changing, and that we will have done enough to graduate out of this school. So let's get right into it. And it begins now. I hope you've had a good time since the last video to now, and been learning and lots, and changing your own reality tunnels and your perspective of what the world is now, and forever building on that and throwing things out into the fields and them coming to you and manifesting all that you want to. It's been an amazing journey, and hope you're appreciating it too. Here we go. Everything is connected and all is one. In this realm it is. There is no fear, no worries, conflict, division or competition in the one. Only love and peace. Here everything is silent and all is one. The state of awareness is called the void, and this is the infinite. This is infinite awareness in awareness of itself. This is infinite existence. This is the creative force of all possibility and all potential. Infinite awareness in awareness of itself could mean that the Oversoul has placed us in a realm into which we have agreed to go, so that we can make the connection between what he can recognize with our 5 senses in this simulation field, not only us, but the Oversoul, and with which we cannot in the infinite realm. See, here we have limitations, but in the infinite realm we don't. So we somehow build up this appreciation. And this can only happen when we're able to decode that which is out of our range through awareness of awareness itself. We see and feel things because we decode them. Surely in the infinite realm, we don't need to decode everything, and everything is possible. Everything outside of the electromagnetic spectrum, everything outside of our density appreciation ranges we'll be getting to, and everything. In the center of everything, where this stillness exists, we can achieve a deeper level of consciousness, and hence, the oversoul can maybe better understand itself. Maybe we are in this construct so the oversoul can better understand itself by reaching higher levels of consciousness and helping it to learn the process as we go through it ourselves. And the added bonus, when we learn how to do this, we are in a position to pass through, make an exodus from this realm, and inhabit new constructs with different realities that we are now better suited for. Once we become aware of our infinite nature, and in the state of being aware that there is an infinite awareness, this is an awareness of itself. We are not our bodies. We are, or avatars, we are in fact consciousness having an experience through our bodies, like experiencing the internet using a computer. The real us is simple awareness. But how aware are we really? Aware enough to say that we're an electrician or a teacher? Or aware enough that we are all that is, has been, and ever can be? Physicality is just an illusion. Quantum physics alone demolishes this concept and squashes this solid reality theory, as we'll get to later in this. Just like our visual reality and the visual spectrum, this is only a small portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, and we are blind to radio waves. We are blind to X-rays and microwaves. In our physical realm, we can only experience things in a certain density range, but everything is connected. This idea of separateness has been thrust upon us by our central nervous system and school and science and teaching. But really, it's just that some densities are not able to be detected. They're not able to be detected at all. We're limited by our 5 sense visual reality to that. It's just that we cannot see these densities. As we're moving through air, we don't notice it. But when we approach a wall, we hit a wall because the density is very close to our density range, when really they are just connected by empty spaces and different forms of compression of a vibrational form. We can only see the frequency of objects, feel the frequency of objects, or rather, what we are experiencing is holographic forms of them in a ridiculously narrow range. This is why everything's separated from everything else, and empty space where there is really no empty space. Now, there are 2 fields. We've got the infinite field, which is an expression of infinite awareness. And once you appreciate this and you're aware of the awareness of being aware of that, we'll just use the term awake, even though it's not really a good term. And B, the electromagnetic simulation field. And if that's all you can appreciate, we term that as asleep. The simulation field is an information construct that mimics the infinite field to lure consciousness into human dungeon, the human dungeon of illusion. In both cases, these fields are operating on levels of frequency we cannot decode, and so we cannot see. When really everything is connected by these fields, but the illusion is such that they are separated. Different thoughts and emotions generate different frequencies. Hate, anger, depression, anxiety are heavy and dense. But love and joy and happiness make us feel light. The effect, our electromagnetic field, or our aura, these affect the energy we pulsate out into other fields, into the construct. The fields are the foundations of everything, and to understand the field is to understand life itself. The fields connect us all, and everything is part of a seamless whole. But we are all just one. Body, mind, and the decoded illusion. Consciousness and awareness operates on levels of vibration that cannot move matter, but our bodies do. By interacting a band of frequency in the human world, the 5 senses, body systems, decode information from the fields, mostly the simulation field, at the beginning, and produce the experienced illusion. It gives us the apparent illusion of our physical world. This produces an external physical world when there is no external physical world. A computer decodes information by Wi-Fi. We see it on the screen, but what we're observing is inside the computer. In the same way we perceive reality, that's really within us. The brain decodes the physicality, but it only exists in the head, not in the real world. The world we think we're living in is simply a decoded illusion. If we look at the infinite world and infinite awareness, and we realize there's differences in densities that restrict us, we see that we're operating on a very narrow bandwidth, almost blindness. Morpheus in the Matrix. What is real? How do we define real? If you are talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. But the brain can only decode things within its capability, so the external world and matter are illusions. The simulation field feeds information into the 5 senses that is decoded into heat, light, weight, solidity, motion, space and time. But the real banger is none of these exist beyond the simulational control. These are just decoded interactions between the senses, simulation and brain mind, within the confines of the speed of light. It too has its limitations here in the simulation field, in the reflection of reality that we live in. But in the infinite field, there is no time, only the decoded illusion of it. There is only the infinite, eternal now in the infinite world. The imagined future and past are still only experiences of when you were or will be in that now. Time is just a concept, and concept to put us in the place within an infinite awareness schedule, because they are within the mind brain. We have a concept of time, but it does not exist. There really only an is. Modern technology and virtual VR headsets give us a simulation within a simulation. They're mimicking the way we decode normal reality. Virtual reality is simulation of the simulation. How can weight be real if our bodies and everything else is a waveform, informational field that is decoded into a non-physical hologram? So why then is it harder to run up a hill that doesn't exist, except in our minds? Morpheus says again, do you think that is air that you're breathing now? Do you think my being faster and stronger has anything to do with my muscles in this place? How can that be when it's all happening in the mind and the body itself is a physical illusion that tricks the mind into sense of limitation? We know this is true in examples of people with superhuman strength. When in trauma, they forget the restrictions of the simulation. They bypass the loop because they're no longer in it. Do not try to bend the spoon. That is impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth. There is no spoon. Then you will see that it is not the spoon that bends. It is only yourself. To bend the spoon, we need to dismantle completely our decoding system. Hallucinogens and psychedelics distort reality by distorting the way reality is decoded. Now, I'm not recommending them, but I've read lots of articles on people who have used them. And it's changing the way we decode reality and bypassing the loops that would normally happen in trauma and things like that. Does a falling tree make a noise if no one is there to hear it? No, only if you hear it. There is no sound. It's just a disturbance in the fields, and it will only make a noise if it's decoded by the brain. Without an observer or decoder, it cannot make sound. The observer creates the reality. We, by changing our perspective, and what we observe is our new reality. The mind transcends time, space, and matter because it exists outside the physical world. Now, that could mean out of the restraints placed on it by the simulation, or it could actually be outside of the construct itself, in the infinite. But we live in a holosphere. A holographic reality decoded from information encoded in waves. But holograms are not solid. They just appear to be solid. A holographic image is projected from a two-dimensional wave pattern, and once decoded, it appears physical. But when not being observed or decoded, returns to its waveform. It only breaks out of waveform once it is decoded by an observer with a different reference point of perspective, and that includes us. Everything, so I found it hard to get through in my head. Everything can't be a simulation, surely, as a purely simulation view. Real things can seem genuine and real, but are they just holographic images of the real? Do living things contain eternal infinite light just as we do, but just as to a lesser degree? Is there an organic overlay that's been implanted by a synthetic overlay? If this world isn't solid, why can't we move rocks or walk through a wall? How is it possible to sit in a chair? This is resistance, but not a physical resistance. It is electromagnetic resistance or repulsion, and tricks our central nervous system play on our overall understanding. Things that are solid are slow, dense frequencies, whereas human avatars are faster and less dense, but they are still close enough within the frequency band that they experience electromagnetic resistance that we decode into the illusion of physical resistance. Like interference of radio stations too close in frequency, and when different enough, they don't interfere. Ghosts may be physical interference, and they may be able to pass through walls because their frequencies are now different. Everything that happens becomes part of the fields, and they will go on resonating until dispersed. Just like hearing battle noises well after a battle is finished, or good vibes and bad vibes. Thoughts and emotions, the sum total of them, all of them, combine to form the electromagnetic field that surrounds us and makes up our perceptions, and the frequency of this perception field directly dictates how we actually interact with the fields of possibility and probability, and the infinite and simulated. For example, a man may smile, but we get the vibe of evil. You can't hide the vibrations you emit. With a very good friend, I was talking about this, and somehow I've always had this ability, but haven't been able to understand it and put it into these terms till recently. This is why some people are better than others at reading people. They can better spot a vibrational frequency truth. It's all encoding, which is the choice, and the decoding is the consequence. Choice leads to consequences, and whether we like or dislike the consequences, other choices are made. This is the feedback loop with the fields of infinite potential and possibility, and the more limited simulation field. The force wants to control us and disconnect us from the infinite field, which should be a natural connection, by drawing our focus or awareness into the 5 sense realm alone, where the holographic world or the simulation field is that we see and feel. Here we become aware of the infinite field. Answers to the world cannot be found in the simulated, projected movie we live in. Rather, the answers are in the expanded realms of consciousness that we cannot see, or rather we choose not to see. This is our battle. The greatest deception in this world is distraction of time, distraction into meaningless arrays of unnecessary drivel and dungeon programming like religion and finding out what the latest Microsoft update is by getting caught up in politics, which are all fictions and unrealities, distracting us from the only one thing we need to do, and that's find out the truth about who we are. Surely in adherence, this is our greatest goal, to exist in the infinite field. Just a thought. We understand that everything is within, and all that has been, and ever can be, and that the end field is timeless and forever. And when we get glimpses of connecting to Source, having synchronicities where the Oversoul is guiding us, and receiving deep understandings in return is truly amazing. The last video I did with the cuttlefish incident is a lot of people have commented on that and contacted me personally, and it was quite an amazing thing, and it really put things into perspective as a growing person, because I'm in no way a master of this. I am merely a novice, but I want to make sure that I've done enough when I pass over. And I like I was tapping into at the start, even though I've had a good life, I'm done with the bull crap that goes on around us. I'm done. I want something better. But fully appreciate the love that's around me and all the blessings that are in this earth, which is a mirror of a more beautiful reality. But I appreciate the difference. The synchronicities they put here to guide us to a deeper understanding, where the Oversoul is guiding us and receiving deep understandings in return, and that process and loop is truly amazing. This would mean that at one stage we have existed in the eternal, infinite field, and hence at some point this ability has been removed while we're in a holosphere or this construct. Is this our choice? Have we chosen to come back into this game? Have we gone in just like a panic room in an amusement park to see if we can escape this dungeon? Have we just accepted this task? Or is it demiurge corruption? Is the Oversoul looking for volunteers to experience falls to better improve the infinite realm? Or have we been thrust into a past timeline before becoming aware of all awareness? I don't think the demiurge is in control. I think the demiurge adds areas of corruption. But if the Oversoul has created something as amazing as this and holds its little fish like us in this aquarium, then even if there is a leak or a corruption or something's put in there, they have a way of blue tacking the hole shut or sealing the seal shut. This is a beautiful, miraculous plan. And we're in a game where we just enjoy the process of learning to the point that we have to say we've learnt enough. Consciousness doesn't come from the brain, though. DNA in this is our cells. They're like receiver transmitters of information that connects us with other levels of reality. This is one belief I believe in. The V, and we can see the damage that's doing to people, and maybe we're not seeing the mortality rates that we expected, even though horrific, and the adverse events are mind blowing. I think maybe this is a way of cutting us up from consciousness. I think DNA might be altered here. And when our connections with the expanded awareness is diminished, our perceptions retreat only into the 5-sense reality world. Information processed by the brain can come from a limited 5 sense of infinity itself, and which one depends on which field we are using, the infinite or the simulation. Imagine a computer as symbolic of the body and 5-sense awareness, and the operator behind the keyboard is the expanded awareness. The computer symbolizes the mind, and the person is the consciousness. The two interact to their mutual benefit, as we should be interacting with our external selves during any experience. But if there is a virus, there's a problem. Their control is the virus. And if we cannot remove it, we return to all that is, has been, and ever can be. We can't. Human experience means that the 5-sense body-mind has different perceptions, different views on our expanded levels of ourselves. Expanded awareness is actually observing the interactions between the computer, mind and body, and the operator itself, our consciousness, being aware of the expanded, of an awareness, which is lesser. The brain is a receiver process consciousness from outside. It may be the interface to the part of you that is not within the avatar, where the consciousness resides. The disconnect between the body-mind and the expanded awareness is the result of hugely different perceptions and hugely different frequencies invoked by that 5-sense dungeon. That is, two people are not in the, if they're not on the, we say people aren't on the same wavelength. They don't understand each other. Once the 5 senses become trapped in the material world, and this is all the tools we have to use, then the body-mind loses the frequency connection it needs for efficient connection with the expanded self. Paranormal activity, for example, is, it can be explained by the fact that there's no physical. We perceive as physical objects are really decoded holographic projections of energetic information fields. And if the field moves, then so does the apparent physical expression of it. They've just lost their density. In this way, one non-physical energy can influence the non-physical energy of another or things around it. Fields can be seriously distorted, which means that everything attached to the fields is similarly disrupted. Once we understand that the base state of all physicality is a waveform field of information, and that the frequencies generated by thought and emotion can impact upon these fields, we gain power. We gain powers, and the inexplicable, or the apparently inexplicable, becomes straightforward to explain. This is like homeopathy, just sort of getting into this as well and learning about it, but I've found that they dilute a solution down to the point of that there's nothing left of the original source of benefit. But that it's so But what happens is it keeps the vibrational field of information represented as frequencies interacting with each other in the liquid that's going to be administered that would be normally harmful to us. And it's these frequencies used in homeopathy that restore the vibrational harmony of good health, you know? Now, miracles are information decoded by the observer, and information spilled into fields may make something amazing happen. Feathers falling from the sky or a stone circle moved. The physical circle does not have to move, only the information field that it represents, and even then it does not have to move. Simply be copied into the mind in a different place. After all, there is only this conversation, and 10 minutes either side may be just implanted into our memories and understanding. What is a virtual reality game but encoded information? No one should doubt that the Oversoul, the creator of our game, could do any of these things easily. There are no miracles, only levels of knowledge about how reality works. The realization from all of this is that everything, no matter how separate it appears to be in the 5 sense dungeon we're in, is one infinite whole, where division is the perception of division, a perceived reality. The ocean is the droplet, or the droplet in the ocean. Put a droplet in the ocean. Where does the droplet end and the ocean begin? They're indivisible. This means that nothing is really, nor it be, separated from the infinite whole. But you can be perceptually separated without the influence of expanded awareness. Different dimensions of reality exist and created by the observing consciousness. The limits of perception create the illusion of dimensions or bands of frequencies. The perception of what you can tune into and be aware and connect with is limited to the simulation. That's our prison. That is limited by the speed of light and then becomes our world of our dimension. This, for all intents and purposes, is the third dimension. We'll just call it that. If our conscious awareness or perceptual limit extends into the 4D, then the 3D ceases to exist slowly because your dimension is what you perceive. Dimensions themselves are limits to our conscious awareness, created by the observer into one size fits all. You know, they are what you make them. And all that is awareness of itself perceives all reality, and there are no dimensions or compartmentalizations. Reality is an infinite field of possibility and probability, waiting to be manifested into our experience by the perceptions of the observing consciousness, whatever the form or level of awareness they may be or take. So for ease of explanation, I'm going to say the 3D is just the simulated world, our perceived matter. 4D is the realm of mind where the simulation is projected, like the astral planes, the realm of the mind, frequency bands where we enter and leave the physical reality, and 5D and beyond is like the expanded and infinite awareness outside the simulation. These are all part of the same infinite awareness, though, but not all are equally conscious. Example, if you take a block of ice in a large body of seawater, it's the same material, but it's in different vibrational form, where the ice is the mind in a sea of expanded awareness, where we're actually gradually melting into full awareness. Putting this another way, the perception of the observers decide what experiences we manifest from the infinite field or the sea. How much of the infinite possibility we are accessing decides everything. How we perceive equals how we observe. What we experience, or think we do. So let's think about how that works a bit. Our thoughts and emotions generate frequencies related to those particular thoughts and emotions that join together to form an energetic field, which is equal to like our perception. So how we different interpret the energetic field like forms our perception, and these are ever changing. Different thoughts and emotions or vantage points of observation will produce vastly different perceptions and frequencies. For example, like if you're following the system to do or die mentality, which is low frequency, you will continually connect to low frequency aspects and all that you encounter, and is a limited feedback loop that does little more than interact with the simulation field itself. And the matrix has gotcha. If perception and self-identity is one of limitless possibility, as an expression of infinite awareness in a brief experience of human form, then your interaction with the fields is transformed and along with our life. It's been an amazing journey growing and being able to get glimpses of this. So now we have do and be the eternal. Put it into practice. And this is within me, and high frequencies, we will connect with higher frequencies. And the feedback loop begins for possibility, for positivity in an expanded feedback loop that interacts with the infinite external field. And we break free from the matrix. A paradox is that the simulation field shares the same space and infinite field, and the idea is to manipulate the fields of the population to remain in this simulation field. It's their greatest goal, to stay in the finite, force us into the finite. So the paradox, how can this existence in the simulation be real when parts of the world seem natural? But what's natural? What do we have to compare natural to? What we see as natural and beautiful to us, there might be something better, but we have nothing to compare it to. If all that we can see is restricted within this simulation, then there's no way to extract real answers, unless we connect to source, unless we see and be part of the infinite realm. At least with VR goggles, we've got a reality that we've lived to compare it with. Maybe going into this game, we agree to have no memories of that infinite realm, so that makes this job a little bit more difficult, a little bit more interesting. But remember, we are fallible creatures, and we are mortal when we begin our understanding. But learning is changing that ideal that we're not. The technology we have today may pale in comparison to what really exists anyway, or what's possible. When real tech may originate in other realities. After all, a non-human force has technology generating the simulation that makes ours. This tech's located in the 4D, the realm of the mind where the simulation is projected, and is outside the realm of normal human awareness. This is like the dreaming to the Aboriginals. Like in the Matrix movies, the tech operates outside their simulated reality. They are generating. The tech that they're using, it operates outside the reality that they themselves are generating. Our conscious fields of thinking mind is located here and directly interacts with our 5 senses through the brain, or so it appears to. The brain is only but a mere processor of information delivered by the mind, and not the origin of the consciousness that we possess, and is thus an illusion in the sense of physicality. We cannot see the conscious field, that is the human mind, with our normal sight, our normal senses, but we are thinking about it in the 4D field. There are many layers of vibration in the 4D, but we only get to seem to interact with the lower, which is a hard bridge to cross. Close to the human, that is why entities can pass between here, the 4D and the 3D. The lower 4D is the lower, like, demonic frequency level, and this is how they grab us and trap us, force us into patterns, force hate and anger, jealousy, and evils to further dungeon program us and push us back into the simulated world. But so the 4th dimension, or astral, is the simulation is projected as wavelength information into the body mind, which decodes it into the 3D illusory physical world. The trap set is easy. So the 5D can be thought of expanded awareness, 4D is delivered to the mind, the simulation, and 3D is the decoded simulation. Mind is decoding its own perceptual prison cell, therefore, isn't it? And that even though we receive waveforms in the 4D, is decoded into 3D physical reality. This decoding happens to form a prison, because we are forced to believe it is real, and we shut out everything else. Our entire simulated reality only happens within the mind, brain, and body. The transfer is happening within the perception of the mind, and not in the physical. But the mind is not in the body. The body is in the mind. The brain doesn't sit in our mind doesn't sit in the body, the decoder does. The brain might sit in our avatar, but the body is in the mind. It's how we project that our thoughts generate the body and place it into context within our 3D restricted simulated world. The body dominates our mind's senses of reality and defines our boundaries because our bodies massively influence our mind's sense of reality. In fact, our mind is operating in the 4D while our bodies are in the 3D, which is simulated projection decoded by our minds. Therefore, our body is in our minds, not the mind in the body. It's forcing this reverse on us. In the Matrix, they do not enter with their bodies, they enter with their minds. The location of characters outside the Matrix is their minds in the 4D, which are decoding the simulation, forming a fake holographic world, our fake reality. They're plugged in, and the brain is not the origin of consciousness though, and in fact is just the processor of information from any source, and thus everything in the simulation is in the mind, and is all a technologically generated dream. The brain is part of the simulated information projection that the 4D mind decodes into a fake reality. Where are our bodies really? So the 4D mind is fed information that it decodes into physical reality, but the mind delivers it in the body when the body is really in the mind. I'm glad we have to get that established. This belief that the mind in the body means it suffers the limitations of the body, the 5 senses. The feedback loop is, for all intents and purposes, the mind is creating, decoding the physical body at one end, and at the other end, the apparent limitations of the body impact on the perceptions and reality of our mind. Hence, our mind becomes limited by the mere thought that it's in a physical body under the rules of the 5 senses. And this is the big pitfall. The body is not in control. The mind is. The mind creates reality. When the mind sees reality, it creates, and the mind does not know unless awakened that it is created what it sees. It's forever changing in the creation of what it sees, and an awakened mind changes that whole analogy. This is changing reality tunnels. Buddha said, the mind is everything. What you think you become. But the mind really is not everything if the mind is programmed to block us from everything. You know, the problem with Buddhism and Hinduism is that, you know, we are meant to imprint when we pass or die, our avatars die, and believe wholeheartedly that where I've got 2 choices, we're either coming back in another avatar to recycle and do this again. And but what it gets wrong is that we're not here that we have to be fully enlightened. We don't have to keep coming back a million times to think, what's the point of this? We're never going to be fully enlightened anyway. We don't need to be fully enlightened. All we need to do is feel that we've done enough, that we have graduated enough from this school, so this school here on earth that we've agreed to be in is now boring. You know, that there's more to learn. So the concept is understanding that, yeah, sure, that we are immortal. We're here to learn and graduate this school, but surely we never have to have the fear that the lessons are too powerful, too strong, that we will never grasp. I like the concept, and a lot of things you hear that you've always taught as idiosyncrasies or sayings, you know, but what came over me the other day was like mind over matter. And that's what it really is, isn't it? It's mind over matter. We are no more in the world than Neo, like Trinity and Morpheus as they enter the Matrix. So where do they live? We live in our minds. They live in their minds and are plugged in. The awareness level called the mind is referred to as the ego, or point of attention. The reality of any level of consciousness is its point of attention. In human form, we are a point of attention within an infinite awareness. We're not infinitely aware because the human point of attention perception perceives limitations. It should be perceiving infinity. This is the whole foundation of human enslavement, controlling our point of attention from which all else follows. The simulation is a dream world, externally created. If we think of something now, say a sunny beach, it's called imagination. This is the infinite, undetectable by our dark prison master creators. It can't detect our thought and our imagination because it's not externally created. The simulation, in contrast, and that we do and interact with it, is information decoded with data for us to encode into a sunny beach in an illusion, so tangible that you believe the sunny beach in its physical form is really there. And thus it's externally created. The first is imagination, and the second is manipulated imagination. Morpheus again. Have you ever had a dream, Neo, that you were so sure was real? What if you were unable to wake from that dream? How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world? The awake dream and the sleep dream are just continuations of the same thing. Edgar Allan Poe said, all that we see or seem is just a dream within a dream. But first, let there be the simulation. Genesis could be a mixture of describing how we're reborn from a reset, like, Phoenix, Nemesis X, Dark Satellite, a big reset, rebuilding. But it could also mean the start of the simulation or reboot. Genesis says, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. But what's light? Is that what connects what we see as separate? It may be the light of the simulation. And the watery light that casts no shadows may be the other side of the firmament, the other side of the snow globe we've been placed in. Let there be light could be moving from an infinite realm into an electromagnetic light of the human world. Mysteries about how reality emerged out of nothing may be credibly explained, with no miracles required, if science just opened its mind to the fact that we're a simulation, but it's never going to happen. What is human? The human body which decodes information through the brain and genetic systems into a certain sense of reality. That's what this avatar does. Mind decodes the simulation informational source into a holographic body, and the body is encoded to perceive reality according to its program, and in doing so impact the reality of our mind, and which it is ultimately a projection. It is the vehicle designed by a non-human force through which our 4D minds could be tricked into believing they are incarnate, or an image of God, with a physical body in a physical world. But now imagine consciousness experiencing reality through those characters, so that these characters are so fooled that the consciousness self-identities with the character they are experiencing. If consciousness in that perceptual state, where the characters are fooled into a false consciousness, would forget it was conscious at all, and believe it should obey the rules of the simulation, like the people who haven't jumped off the ship of fools do. 95% of human behavior has been shown to originate from subconscious, not the conscious, the mind. So it's the subconscious, in the sense, is the simulation. If expanded consciousness does not override the program, it becomes a mere spectator. The Great Reset, all designed through an AI connection to the brain to infuse multiple cultural programs into one global monoculture program, which everyone must follow. This is the Great Reset thereafter. Morpheus. The Matrix is a system, Neo. That system is our enemy. But when you're inside, you look around, what do you see? Businessmen, teachers, lawyers, and carpenters. The very minds of the people we are trying to save. But until we do, these people are still part of that system, and that makes them our enemy. You have to understand, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. And many of them are so inured, so hopelessly dependent on the system, that they will fight to protect it. This could be written as, the Matrix is a system, Neo. That system is our enemy. But when you're inside, you look out, what do you see? You see a 3D illusion being decoded by 4D minds that we are trying to free. But until we do, these people are still part of that system. You have to understand, most of these minds are not ready to be unplugged. And many of them are so inured, so hopelessly mesmerized by the simulation, that they will fight to protect it. We're not here to change the world. We're not here to change those people over, to free the sheep's mind, for it might be near impossible. At the same time, we're not here to oppose the evil system of the world and realize how ridiculous it is and fight for freedom and this and that. Sure, it's an admirable task, and hopefully everyone went through that process in their journey to get here, but the greatest thing that I've understood recently is that these are unchangeable, and they're meant to be unchangeable, because, like the yin-yang circle, we need the bad to be able to learn to be able to see how ridiculous it is. And we need the balance, because unless that side of bad it doesn't equal the side of light, the wheel will not turn. We are here as a training ground, just passing through. And we can't do that in a kumbaya world. We need to see the bad to be able to appreciate the good, lead to the fact that we're mortal souls, and that we've learnt enough to graduate. It's quite an incredible process. Now, I'm not sure whether the craziness that we see in our world is because now, if it's more evident just through our sheer perception of the world changing, or whether it's actually getting crazier and crazier. But it's irrelevant. The crazier it gets, the more we awake, and that's an important point. Looking at some Gnostic stuff that I've been doing recently, Gnostic means learned, and gnosis is translated from the Greek to mean secret knowledge, which relates to understanding spiritual mysteries that reveal the nature of reality. Much Gnostic information has been destroyed, and the censorship continues through government and media and tech today, just in different forms. Gnostics were aware that death is only death of the body and not consciousness. They were fully aware of that. Just like the Hindus and Buddhists and ancient cultures, this is not a new concept. We're just starting to realize it again as truth. Soul is an aspect of the mind, deepest thoughts, feelings, beliefs of a person in the 4D. Soul is associated with the 4D and still perceives itself as with the mind in terms of individuality and apartness, involved in the reincarnation process. But this is the trap, Spirit is really in the 5D and beyond. Soul is the 4D and with us, and spirit is the 5D and beyond. All that is, that has and lives in awareness that all is one, way beyond the sense of reality and experience. One of our greatest purposes for being here is, as immortal eternal beings, is to experience what it is to be like, to be mortal, and so appreciate that we're not. The Nag Hammadi, which was an ancient text only discovered recently in our history, documents refer to a bad copy as a realm of non-existence, which is correct in that the fake world of the simulation is only a decoded illusion and nothing like humans experience it to be, or our 4D minds perceive it to be. Fake reality are the lower eons, and a poor reflection of prime reality or upper eons. So, in the past, I've encountered Plato's cave to do with everything from our corrupt legal system, unconstitutional legal system, to explaining the way that we have been trapped in a false sense of reality, and its analogy is quite striking. The more you learn and become aware, and your perceptions change, the more relevance this takes on deeper levels. Plato and Plato's cave allegory was used to describe the human plight. How accurate was he? Prisoners lived in a cave. I'll describe the image. And they'd never seen the outside world. They're chained and can only see one wall of the cave. A fire burns behind them where figures walking past cast their shadows on the wall that prisoners can see. But the prisoners don't know this. They only see the shadows and believe this to be reality. Some became experts of the shadows that were no more than illusions. Like our scientists and doctors today, the more learned they are, the more they're trapped. That's why I consider myself so lucky, these people are so heavily indoctrinated, not only that they're in the prison so deep they don't want to admit anything deep because of how much time and effort they've put into it, but they've been conditioned by their family to follow that role since birth, a lot of them. Our most people that we're taught to be our most learned people are in fact our most spiritually blind. Back to the cave. One prisoner escapes and sees that reality is not what they thought it was. But he comes back to tell his fellow prisoners, but they don't believe him. The Nag Hammadi highlights the differences between existence and non-existence. And this is what this is. The shadows on the wall are what these people in the cave see as their reality, but it's really other people casting the fire and projecting that illusion onto a screen, so the people who have never experienced anything else immediately believe it's true, and so doing cannot escape. Their cave is their dungeon. from which a lot don't want to escape. For when the prisoner leaves and tells them of the bright world ahead, he's ostracized. Some of the people in the cave slandered him. Some just openly disbelieved, and the others, even though thought he might be telling the truth, refused to budge from the reality that they were in. They were comfortable there in their dungeon. So the Nag Hammadi, and goes on, it says, and then the existent separated itself from non-existence, and the non-existent is the evil, which has manifested in matter. And the enveloping power separated those that exist from those that do not exist. And it called the existent eternal. And it called the non-existent matter. And in the middle, it separated those that exist from those that do not exist. And it placed veils between them. The human body is a mere phenomenon of the assimilation to focus the attention of our mind. That then it's somehow personified into a physical world. It's the trap. It's the hook. And and this is how the Gnostic text perceived it. They refer to the body as a prison, and humans as sparks or droplets of the same essence. Gnostics believed that humans would eventually escape. They described the body as a garment that clothes the spirit. This is all very fascinating. Our avatars over the top of our infinite light, for example, they describe the body as a garment that clothes the spirit. We are not in the body when the body is really in the mind. We are not in the body. The body is in us. We are not in the matrix. The matrix is in us. To escape, we need to tap into the 5D consciousness and express that into the simulation field. Open our soul minds to spirit so that we can become far more powerful than our body programs us to be. Mind over matter, or is it really mind-spirit over the illusion of matter? The world is encoded with geometric patterns, sequences, codes, including nature, our structures, proportions, our face. Everything is built on mathematical code, which gives us direct indication that we're in a simulation. My daughters ask, how do you know we're in a simulation? And to me now, it's pretty obvious we're in a simulation. Once the penny drops, not only is everything is built up of these codes of phi, pi, golden means and golden ratios and golden sections and Fibonacci sequences and everything like that, which is purely mathematical. It's not that nature is mathematical, it's that mathematics has created the nature. But when we look at isometric patterning, not only of events like Phoenix and Nemesis and events in the sky, but we see that once we split the timeline into a parabola, that on one side of the parabola leading up to the Anno Domini calendar of 0, which was created, which is Jesuit created to muck up our dates, as I've explained before, from the Annus Domini calendar to now. But what they did was they provide a way of isometric patterning analysis of this, where if you put a parabola over those timelines, we see at one part of the parabola on the left of 0 corresponds to an exact big event on the right-hand side. The patterning of dates is isometric and perfectly patterned. Now, how can this be if we're not in a simulation? So it's not only events of nature, which we might sort of think maybe, but it's actually to do with human activity as well. How can all of these things add up and not insinuate that we are purely in a simulation? Collectively, these are called divine proportions, golden ratios. These are a simulation of codes. The Fibonacci sequence, for example, adds each number to the previous number. So 1 and 1 is 2. 1 and 2 is 3. 2 and 3 is 5. 3 and 5 are 8. 5 and 8 are 13, and so on and so on. It's found in everything, including the face, the animals, DNA, pine cones, trees, shells, hurricanes, seeds, and the petals in flowers. Every part of a hologram is like everything represented is to do with these golden numbers. And it's interesting that I found out that every part of a hologram is a smaller version of itself. Like, if a hologram's actually cut into 4, and it will project the full image. This is the foundation of the principle of as above is below. We have a mirror image or copy of a good reality, and we're living in the bad copy. Therefore, even though it's corrupted and fragmented, it still shows the whole, but with imperfections. Therefore, everything within the whole or the hologram simulation must be a smaller version of the whole hologram or simulation outside. Like using computer game analogy, the human body is an extension of the game with the same characters because it's part of the game. This leads to the question whether we are a smaller version within this construct or a larger version. Are we here just the fragment, or is the tiny fragment out there? Now, the rule of negatives, if they say that the government's good for you and is doing the right thing, then you can think the opposite. If they think that modern technology will assist you and save you time, you can assure that it doesn't. Now, if they're telling us that the universe out there is vast and infinite, maybe we can assume it's not. And it leads me to thinking, if our scientific world professes to not know about the quantum, if it professes to not know about the infinite realms of the universe, how can they be confident about us wanting to believe anything that they've discovered in the middle? What can be proven with experiment is just part of the hoax. What we believe to be true and proved by experiment is just like jumping back onto the ship of fools. Okay, where are we up to? This, Now, if we look at fractal patterns, for example, which are amazing things, fractal patterns are based on a holographic principle that are never-ending patterns that are similar across different scales, that are infinitely complex across different levels and scales forever. John Lamb Lash, who I've only encountered recently, he came up with the concept of Sophia, based on and uses the Nag Hammadi as his primary text, says that the demiurge fashions a heaven world copied from the fractal patterns of the eternal eons, the fractal patterns of prime earth reality. So, interesting. I'll read it again. The demiurge fashions a heaven world, a heaven world, saying that it's infinite, based from the fractal patterns of the eternal aeons. All form is like a vibrational pattern, and that maintains energy in a particular state, like cymatics. And if our physical reality is a hologram, and so as with fractals, the same patterns repeat across different levels. Some phenomena are encoded with the fractal patterns, like our river networks, mountain ranges, craters, lightning bolts, like coastlines, goat horns, tree branches, the animal colours and patterns, pineapples, our heart rates, heartbeats, neurons, the brains, the eyes, respiratory systems, circulatory systems, earthquakes, snowflakes, crystals, ocean waves. We don't need to try and bend the spoon or the universe. That's impossible. There is no universe. It's only ourselves. The whole experience reality is founded on electricity and electromagnetism. Caltech discovered that DNA is indeed like an electrical wire for signaling within a cell. It's an electrical device wire signaling system. Bees find food using electrical signals. The brain fires using electricity. We could go on and on. The electric universe alone shows that we are one, because electricity and electromagnetism continue throughout, just in different vibrational form. Now, the observable universe is 99.999% plasma, which is like they tell us is the fourth state of matter. It's never really talked about in school. You mentioned plasma, and we won't go there. But it's almost a perfect medium for electricity and electromagnetism. So there's two really big concepts to consider. This material world is only one level of the simulation. And the idea is to trap minds in further illusion after body death, to keep them on the Ferris wheel of the reincarnation cycle. That's our dumbing down, so that we only perceive the material part of the simulation to keep us in the lowest level of the reincarnation cycle, without the possibility of advancement. And secondly, that not every human has consciousness in the sense that we perceive it. Either it's not their time, or NPCs, or whatever you want to call it. Bodies need the mind to decode them into the holographic reality, but they don't need the mind to be their mission control, because the simulation is capable of doing that and corrupting that itself. So just like it's doing, you can think of it like virtual reality and computer games. They're mimicking the simulation, the holographic principles. And so what you see in one will be happening in the other. So bodies die when their electricity is withdrawn and the mind soul is freed. Freed from the sense that, like, the mind is freed from the belief that it's now a body. Surely when we die and our mind and our spirit leaves our body for reconnection, we're going, in all those past lives we lived, we're thinking, what dummies, look at this. You know, it's all belief and perception programming, all of it. It's thus returning to heaven when we get it right, may be returning to the eternal oneness. And if we haven't got it right, maybe going, give me another go at that panic room. It's like buying 3 tickets at, Movie World. Well, let's go again. When the mind is influenced by connection to the infinite spirit in the 5D and upwards, it can override the program. That's what we're trying to do, override the program, so we're not limited in what we decode. If it isn't the simulation is controlling our sense of reality, this includes the birth process. When there is no physical, there can be no birth except as a decoded illusion. I've seen images where they show the egg meeting the sperm, and you see it flash in electromagnetic light until it's out of our visual range again. Now, our avatar parents allow the union of that electromagnetic spirit force to form that light. Birth is a re-entering, I think, of our spirit electromagnetic infinite selves back into this construct. So that means that death would be a decoded illusion as well. We experience it as a physical event. The characters in The Matrix died only when their minds accepted they died. In part 4, Neo reached a level of consciousness that saw him that actually see through the illusion of death and came back to life as a result. The body that died was just in his mind and existed only as information fed into his brain by the Matrix. The birth and death processes are an illusion by the simulation to trick the mind into thinking it is entering and leaving a physical world, when all that's happening is in the mind is decoding the informationary illusion all of a sudden. The body is in the mind, not the maternity ward. This has been used manipulative by the people who promote that death is the end. Do what you can before you die. You only live once mentality to dungeon program fear customers into their religion cult, to sell pharma to prevent it, and to spread dark energy through the fear of isolated pointlessness. If this is an infinite realm, why don't they ever let kids try and consider how much life they had before they were born into this construct, into this simulation, and what's going to happen afterward? This is just our life here as avatars on this earth is just a mere blip of eternity. It wouldn't even register in the point of eternity. And the whole thing is run by a super sophisticated AI system which we can't even contemplate or fathom. It's like perceptual servitude. The AI exists in the 4D, and so do thoughts and emotions, like our fear and anxiety and anger and depression. We can't see the 4D phenomena, only feel them. Remember, these are lower 4D base chakra energies and can travel between the 3D and 4D. This is why the dark entity creates these phenomena, so it can feed off them. It feeds between our 3D and 4D consciousness. AI is in fact powered by it. The Not-Nilk, or whatever you want to call it, or the dark ring, or the dark reality, it's actually powered by this connection through the 3D into 4D of fear. This is why this channel is all about removing fear. We don't need fear. In the Matrix, human power is the Matrix, but not the human being, rather the mind, not the spark. Now, those are in a high enough expanded consciousness, in a high enough frequency, can escape the simulation after death, and those that aren't are recycled back into the physical in a process called reincarnation of the soul. Even the soul is part illusion. Only the spirit really exists. Reincarnation actually means, be made flesh again. Many Eastern religions believe in reincarnation, but their explanation does not make sense, really, I don't think. It's a bit like the Christian idea of God judging you for all eternity based on one brief life, that blip, and neither wheel of misfortune in the first place. I, I believe it's the creator of the simulation or oversoul that does, Reincarnation doesn't lead to enlightenment. The reincarnation process does lead to escape from the simulation, only further in, with further programming embedded into our mind. Reincarnation happens, but it's not the gradually learning that allows us to pass peacefully with greater light. We need to stamp onto our reality tunnels that when we go, we have had enough, we have learnt enough, and if I do need to come back, then, I want to take some of this spiritual, physical, light learning with me. But I think understanding that you've learnt enough here is going to be enough. Because if the Oversoul has got us here to learn and escape the panic room, you've escaped the panic room by your avatar dying, knowing that you've got nothing else to learn here. So what's the point of being in the panic room any further? And now we get to it. The body exists in an encoded information 3D field and decoded by the 4D mind into holographic physical reality. But the mind believes the 3D to be real. And when the body dies in the simulation, the mind perceives itself to have died, and so the loop continues. On and on it goes until we break pattern through perception. We break pattern through perception. If we're starting to perceive higher levels of vibration, that's what we'll be living in. The body cannot live without the mind unless it is purely an AI insert. The body's aging program becomes the body's decomposition program. That's why we rot. The program continues, but the spirit is gone. It's all program. The body is a program and the dark entity treats it as such. Follow the light and near-death experience recounts are traps because the simulation could be feeding those thoughts. The same simulation information source is capable of delivering us a reality that has no memory of past experience, or otherwise we would fully comprehend what we're here to do and be part of. Some do remember though. This is what my daughter asked me, how do you know in this reincarnation stuff, how do you know we come back? And a lot of phenomena that you see on television are like Forensic Files or 60 Minutes bullcrap. But when you see and you watch enough of these children that have been documented, that are remembering their past lives and settings, and they're not rare, these occurrences, there are the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. And these are not all formed just by camera crews and scripts. You can tell that these kids are real and what they're saying. Now, this is either by glitch in the simulation or they're actually connecting to the 5D, or they remember fully their past lives. Which, their information is retained. They can remember where cracks in walls are. They can remember different parts of our flat plane world that they live in. They can describe where items of furniture in a house that they were brought up in and events that happened in that, and show parts of the village that when this time happened in history that is in this village. It is absolutely mind-boggling. And this can only happen, and kids have this adult perspective of this reality, if they had been reincarnated, if their spirit had gone into another avatar, but they were now either not imprinted correctly, or there were glitches in their past memories were remained. But it is compelling, very compelling. So the mind's in touch with infinite awareness can override the simulation, as we said. So you can either choose to ask the simulation, or you can ask spirit. So we got to choose whether we're going to communicate with simulation or we're going to communicate with spirit. No brainer. What's our mission control going to be like? Is this the difference between being asleep or awake? The awake open the body and the mind, the program, to reconnect with spirit. And if you're awake, you override the program. You don't feed the bad energy into the dark ring. Realize that everything, and I mean everything, is a psyop to distract upon who we are, and actually get going and understand who we are, so that when we go, we are fully aware we've had enough of this game and we want more. You can be everything and everywhere you want to be simultaneously. Crucial to escaping the simulation is knowing that we are escaping from and the mind tricks that cause consciousness to return over and over in what they call the reincarnation loop and reincarnated experience and repeated experience. We are recycled only if the mind continues to be caught in the illusions of the matrix simulation. which continues after death. Free your mind before death. Free your mind before death. Nag Hammadi calls the escape reincarnation. And don't forget, he that overcometh will inherit all things. Revelation 21:7. Your perception dictates your vibration, and your vibration dictates whether you pass through the ring or continue to be entrapped by it. The reality and self-identity of our mind is expressed as a frequency field. This is why it's so vitally important to reach a state of self-realization before body death, in which you not only conceptually conceive that we are infinite consciousness, but we also got to live it, and then become it. So only can we gain enough satisfaction that we've learnt all that we need to do is not only understand that we're immortal souls, but we've got to become it, and we've got to live it to the point that we've lived it enough. It's and the illusion, the frequency net that guards the exit from the simulation, it's only codes for the mind to decode, and if we don't choose to do that, then there's no longer a net, there's no boundary or border anymore. The secret is not to decode the trap. When your mind is clear of illusion and you stop decoding the illusion, don't you? Not only just realizing there's a trap, but then stopping decoding the information that the trap's giving you. And if you're operating on this for higher frequency, you're not decoding an apparent reality. You start decoding a real reality, and the reality that they're given to us in the simulation won't exist for us anymore. This is the background to the circle or bounds of frontiers within which is contained the consciousness of those who are still under the sway of delusional separateness. The delusion of separateness represents the frequency that decodes the ring. It's cause and effect. What we don't decode cannot exist in our reality. A spoon does not exist unless it's decoded. When I leave, I will not believe in any boundary, border, or limit. I'm just gone. I want all my loved ones, everyone that I've ever encountered. I want to meet them again. I want to be in that infinite realm with them. Surely that is impulse enough. When we're all that is, has been, and ever will be, we live it, and we be what we believe. We are all, and we will ourselves deliver ourselves from these delusions that hold us in this vibrational slavery. I think our greatest mission is to experience and appreciate mortality, though. No point in appreciating immortality at the beginning, because you will never appreciate the mortality ideas that you've come from. That's the first step, The broken rides in this amusement park are here like for us to learn. There needs to be evil dissatisfaction and frustration as we see the system, so we can see the system for what it really is. But will you let it dictate things to you? I have been freed since I've realised and aware of the distractions that are around me and just don't take part in them anymore. I find I have more time in a day. I find I don't get aggro as much, and I don't have these crowded thoughts in my brain about what am I going to do next, what am I going to do next, because there's so much less to distract. It gives me more time to focus on the real. We're not here to fix society. Society's broken and unfixable. That's not our job. Our job is to recognise it and move on. There needs to be this balance, like I said, between the good and evil, because this fully exposes us to, because we're aware of that, it makes us understand how corrupting the simulation actually is and exposes us to these lessons. The crazier the stuff we consider, and greater we see the corruption and energy sapping events and then no longer take part in it, the more we grow and learn. That's the yin-yang, the feedback effects. The more evil itself has to be weighed by the good, so the more the bad grows in complexity and ridiculousness, the more awareness side we get. And it's to bring us face to face with our mortality and understand it, and most of all, not be fearful of it. The endless complexity is the distraction. Remember, we are living in an inversion, so the more complex something becomes, the simpler the answer is. We need to remove the design and resort back to the simple, back far enough and high enough to reveal the trick that we've overcome. Most of us have done this, or we wouldn't be here now. But It's easy to get trapped in little bits along the way. Seeing the big trap and then freeing yourself from it is very difficult. You know, that backing up far enough and high enough to reveal the trick is the start, but the greatest difficulty is to go that one step further and live through it. And the dark's allowed to exist to give us experience about ourselves, about our job, and how we live through it. Bypass it, but refuse to feed off the bad energy and just appreciate the good or the organic under the inorganic overlay, or appreciate what has been mirrored properly from the beautiful infinite world into this. This is by design, by the Oversoul or Creator, that if the whole or oneness is completely within us, it's not in the collective and may never will be in this cycle. Where all that is. Only us, each of us, we see the whole past this place, so we alone can fight the dark reality by not acknowledging it. It knows how to fight us here, but it can never understand who we really are. We need to appreciate this escape room. Live an understanding and refuse bad energy into our systems, not only by recognizing it, but again, we've just got to live through it. Laugh at it. But that's up to us. Back to the dots within the simulation. What's amazing to me recently is this. If you look at this picture, what does it first appear to you? It appears to be a colour image, doesn't it? Now, don't zoom on it. Have a look. On a zoom, you can see the black and white with the lines over the top. That forces us to see colour when it's not even there. There's the picture. And your brain fills in the rest. This is the 2D simulation. Having a look at what reality is at black and white, it's a black and white photo. At the zoom, this blew me away. This is how the simulation creates the image of what we see, and when we add dots upwards and below, we get a fuller trick that makes the simulation real, builds perspective into the 3D and 4D. But the materials are only formed in our brain. Our central nervous system takes control, fills in the gaps, and we get the idea and perspective of a reality that doesn't even exist. Our central nervous system fills in the gaps of the colours, the materials, and the material is formed that does not even exist. Can I just stress that? But there are 3 overlapping line systems. These include over the Earth, and they include our sim as well. And what happens is, the line systems are one of consciousness. The first is consciousness. The second is the Gaia grid, which produces life. The trees, etc. are connected to this. And the third grid could be the Akashic records dealing with memory. All of these are simultaneous, happening at once, where there's no future, no past, and happenings right now, but it has already happened. Don't forget, we are not in the original organic infinite reality. We exist as a copy of the original reality in the organic, and this copy has flaws. These flaws show us that we are in a simulation, luckily. This leads us to quantum physics, again, which completely confirms that we're in a simulation and that there is no separateness and everything is connected. Just let me bring up one more image, and we're getting there. Interesting stuff. This is from the movie The 13th Floor, where the man starts realizing that he's in a simulation in the game, and then everything makes clear to him. He starts seeing how the real is made from dots, which give us the whole perception of reality. Remember here we go. So back to the quantum physics. A fella that Jason pointed out recently in a book, his name's Ishak Bentov. He wrote a book called A Brief Tour of Our Higher Consciousness, who shows, like in layman's terms, that this isn't a physical reality, and this is how he does it. He stipulates that the physical body is made up of interesting pulsating fields that we call body and flesh, bones and blood. But when we magnify them with using electron microscopes and powerful devices, the visually disappears. Everything that's visual disappears. When you aren't on a globalist payroll of understanding, you can see scientists will openly say that as you magnify something, what is perceived to be physical reality ceases to exist, and then it's all open spaces connected by light. And believe between these things that we believe are empty spaces that are properties of the physical, then they're not connected by physical matter. They are connected by light and vibrational form. They appear to be unconnected and separate, as our reality would dictate to them and as we're taught, but they're not. They are created and connected by different vibrations out of our scope of recognition and decoding abilities. So when we actually isolate what we think is a physical, like an atom, and blow it up, you notice you don't see many visualizations of blown up atoms, so we can maybe see electron. Now they've got the ability, but they don't want to show you because they can show that you'll see what I'm talking about. It dissolves into an oscillating field of light. When magnified, it's very evident that there are vast distances between what we call nuclei, but still connected. This model shows a quantum aspect to reality, that there is more that is there than actually perceived. Therefore, it is not difficult to process that all of this is just modes of spirit, because even physical matter like this dissolve into an oscillating field of light upon magnification. This makes us link between the quantum and the cosmological. The cosmological is like infinite tiny particles and components of ether in a field, okay? So this makes us link between the quantum and cosmological. The fields have been built out of ideas already impressed upon the holography by others and ourselves. What's more, if we are the link between both quantum and cosmological, if we can link both of those like we do, then we have to be something that's beyond this in order to encompass it all. We are immortals, we are spirits, and in this world, what we think is real is merely an experience of an actual reality. That is it's just an experience of reality. If we can link the cosmological and the quantum with our light that we have within us, we are immortal beings. We are immortals. When we understand this, we have overcometh. He that overcometh will inherit all things. The real us is pure awareness. That we are all that is, has been, and ever can be. And this is our awareness of awareness. I hope you've enjoyed the broadcast today. Tune in next time. Don't forget, share, subscribe, like. That would all be appreciated. Have a great day. Hope this was enlightening.